it's never perfect when you start, but just start. Like, don't ever let that, because something's not perfect, don't ever let that be the reason why you don't start. It doesn't ever have to be perfect. You just have to start. And I think I did a pretty good job of educating myself by using local community support. With the CDC, they're constantly having workshops and seminars and like entrepreneurship programs. And so like utilizing your community with what it offers is such a huge, important part of the puzzle too.
Melanie Robinson.
Yes, that's me.
Yes. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. And we are here today because of Eclectic Café. You are one of the contributors that we have on the magazine.
Yes.
And I mean, I've known you for many years now.
I think like almost 3 or more.
Yeah. I think it's been a while.
That's crazy.
I know. Time flies. And I wanted to have you on the podcast because you have a very interesting background as well, which we can get into in terms of all the things that you have done cooking wise, the competitions and so on. But I think I would like to start by at the beginning, if you will. So where does your journey start?
It's kind of funny because I was thinking of that this morning as, I'm getting ready to come, and it's a long story that I'll compress the best I can.
You don't have to. You can tell the story if you want.
No, totally. It's funny because I had done the CDC Lunch and Learn, and this was part of kind of my journey to where I am today, which was, I think, like 5 years ago. And now what we've achieved in the last 5 years has been pretty cool too. But I started this journey in culinary at 30, and why so late was because my entire youth, I'll say from like 15 to like 28, I was really focused on a career in either policing, paramedic, military. And those things were always like, I'm very much a of service person, right? So like those were things that I felt that I was contributing to society. I was being helpful. I was, helping people in crisis. And that stemmed from losing my father at 7 to drunk driving. Now, he was the passenger of the vehicle that was intoxicated. So it always has been like heavy on me. Like, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to fix it so somebody else doesn't have to go through what I've gone through, which is a lovely notion, but not a real notion, because you can't stop these incidents from happening. They will be continuing happening for the rest of our lives. But yeah, it was something that I was really focused on, and like I wanted to right the wrong that my dad had done. So that's kind of where the policing, paramedic, and military kind of came into play, because I was always that kind of tough chick and wanted to like be control in the situation and take charge and be the leader. And then my mom was an entrepreneur when I was a kid. She had her own business, and my dad looked after me quite often because she was working, as now I understand. But through that time that we had together, he was always cooking. So, it wasn't always wonderful food, but it was food that is, at my core memories of things that we made together as I was a kid. Now, my mom is a wonderful cook as well, but, those memories that I had with my dad until I was about like 7 was cooking and having fun and being playful. So it wasn't until I got married, and at 28, my husband and I decided to go to Kelowna, British Columbia, for a honeymoon. And we're very much like, I don't want to go somewhere warm and tropical because I'm very fair. And I'm like, no, I want to go somewhere cool. And I haven't had the chance to explore Canada even at that point. And so I was like, yeah, this is awesome. And Kelowna kind of is known as the Napa Valley of Canada. It's a stunning, stunning place. And I had always had that value of cooking in me since I was a kid. You know, growing up in my teens, I would be cooking for the family because mom would be at work, and my brother and I would fight over who cooked because the opposite person had to do the dishes, of course. And I hate doing dishes, but it's a necessary evil. Even to this day, I hate doing dishes, but I got to do it. So yeah, like cooking has always been kind of in my world. And my friends were like, "You're such a great cook. Why don't you sell stuff at the farmer's market?" And I'm like, nah. It's whatever. It's whatever. And then I kind of became later in life, I'm like, well, if I become a cop, they work 4 days a week. And then I have another 4 days a week because, you know, in reality, that's 8 days a week that we all really work anyways. So on my days off, I will own a restaurant and be a chef. So I'll be a police officer and I'll be a chef. And then I was like, you know, the more that thought came to me, I'm like, why am I working 8 days a week? Like, this makes no sense. So I just had to finally say, like, no, I think it's culinary that I was supposed to be doing. And then after that trip with my husband, I was just like, we came back and we chatted, and I'm like, I am so damn inspired with what they're doing out there. And they were so far ahead with farm to table and local and sustainability, as, you know, anybody in BC really is forward in that mindset. And it kind of trickled down into Ontario eventually, but I was just so inspired. And then that really was like the caveat. I was like, no, this is the switch, and this is what I'm going to pursue.
So you were already thinking about, I guess, sticking with a culinary career, and then you went to Kelowna, and that inspiration was kind of like the final trigger to say, you know what, like this is it.
It totally was. I remember we were eating at a winery, Quailsgate Winery, in I think it's West Kelowna, and it was so simple. It was a simple dish, and it was like a crab risotto with halibut. I love halibut. And I was just like, damn, I got to cook like this. I have to learn how to do this. Like, this is just like, again, it's simple. But that's what cooking is. It's simple techniques done correctly. And that's what that plate was. It was simple perfection. And, yeah. And then it was just like, okay, let's do it. And, you know, I was still working part-time. I was in security and surveillance at the casino through my 20s, we'll say. And so I was still working in surveillance. And then I decided to go to Georgian College because we had a house, we had a mortgage. I couldn't just like up and leave to France, you know, like that just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So I had to stay local. But, you know, I absolutely loved everybody that I met in the program. And I only signed up for a 1 year intro to culinary. And then I felt like I was finally the smart kid in something. and I was a mature student at 30. And I was like, this feels good and this feels right. And like, yeah, I was just taking every opportunity that I got while I was in school. I did chocolate competitions. I competed twice. The 1 year program turned into the 2 year program. I became the junior chef president of the chef association that was associated with the culinary school and the Muskoka Chef Association. So I was a junior. And the full like aha moment, we'll say, is at the end of my 2 year term at school, there was a stage that was the first time it had ever been offered by the Canadian Culinary Federation. And that is a coast to coast Canadian chef association. And so there's presidents in different provinces and vice presidents, and then everybody comes together for like a big conference. And it's, you know, I've been to Nova Scotia and I've been to Newfoundland for it. I've been to BC for it. The kicker is, I was one of 4 junior chefs that won the stage, and it was back to Kelowna where,
oh, wow,
where I was inspired to cook. And so I had to write an essay, and I mean, who was going to turn down that essay, right? It was like, I was in that restaurant. I ate that food, and this inspired me to be a chef. This inspired me to cook like I learned when we were there. This inspired me to support local. And so I won the 2-week stage. I was one of 4. I won the 2-week stage, and I got to cook in the restaurants we ate in. And I was just like, if this isn't like a full circle moment, I don't know I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. I am doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And it was really cool because it was almost 5 years to the date that I was there on my anniversary. So it was late August and we were returning. And I was actually eating at Quail's Gate. That this is a really special moment. We went to Quail's Gate, the four of us chefs, and they were doing a 5 or 7 course tasting menu with wines for us because we were the stage winners and we were being treated very, very well. And so through the progression of the meal, the server comes out and she brings this plate and I look at it and I just start to cry. And I'm like, what is this? And she's like, the chef read your essay and he wanted to recreate that dish for you. So he
Wow.
made you crab risotto with halibut as your third or fourth course. And I'm like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And so I'm like crying at the table and everybody else is like, what the hell is going on? Like, what are you doing? Why are you crying right now? It's just fish and rice. Like, come on. And I'm like, no, like this dish inspired me to do this. And they're like, what? So I told them the story and they're like, that is so cool. So, immediately I took a break and I went and called my husband who's in Ontario. He's like, yeah, that's nice. Thanks. He's like, so glad you're enjoying. And I'm like, no, but like, this is like the story still brings me to tears. It brings me chills. And it's just like, you have those moments in life when you don't know what direction you need to go. And you're like, everything is telling me to do this, but there's something that's really pulling me in this direction. And that was the choice between, career in, paramedic, military, policing to like culinary. And then after I had that experience, I immediately wanted to move to BC, but unfortunately we didn't. And, the chefs were like, I'll get your husband a job. It's like, just come and work for me. And it was really sweet because, as somebody that was a mature student trying something completely different and just throwing something at the wall and seeing if it's going to work. And it was like, this is going to work. This is going to work.
Yeah. That's amazing. What a story. To be able to find something, because you said it took like 5 years for you to go back there, right? And
it did.
5 years doesn't take it. It's not a long time when it comes to a career, if you will, right? You usually spend your first 5 years just kind of learning the ropes and like understanding where you are, what's your place in the industry or whatever you're in. And to be able to, accomplish that and to feel that reward, for making that decision because you found your place, you found your thing,
Yeah. And I think, I was the oldest of the four of the stage, right? They were all in their like young 20s to mid 20s. And I think that was such a benefit to me because I'm an adult. I'd already been through life. I'm doing these natural life things. And so, if a crisis comes up in the kitchen, I'm already able to handle and switch and think ahead of the curve because I've been through that in my life where, if you're 21, you don't always have that. You haven't had those opportunities yet. So, I apply that to the kitchen and I kind of call it like we're culinary MacGyvers because we're always off site doing something and something is always going to go wrong. And you just have to have your toolkit ready with whatever bag of tricks that you can make it work and, pull it off. But I think being that age, like everything just fell into place at the right time in my life for that. And it was just like, yeah, everything was just lined up. If I went to do it when I was 22, the first time I went to college, I was 20 years old and I went because I wanted to party and drink. That's what college kids do. That's life,
Yeah.
right? So the first semester I did that. And then I got a wake up call with my shitty grades. And then the next 3 semesters I was on the dean's list. And I'm like, if I only reined it in, it would have been okay. But, going into the college for the second time, I was laser focused. I'm like, I am going to do this. I'm going to accomplish these things. I'm going to be involved. We didn't have children at that time, so I could really throw everything I had into it, and just push myself to learn and grow. And that's the one thing that I kind of felt was a bit of, a roadblock was just, there's positives to starting late and negatives to starting late. Like I felt like I was playing catch up to all of the younger generation of cooks that had started at, 18 in the kitchen and they're now like Sue's at 24 or 25 because they've had that 6 years in the industry. So, I mean, that was another like, okay, I have to be great and I have to push myself because I feel like I'm behind. But whether you're behind or ahead, you're always exactly where you need to be.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, because you're right. And a lot of, like you said, a lot of people when they're young, and it's myself included, when I went to university, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Like, it was just, I picked a major because, well, at the time, my high school counselor told me told me that I would be good at psychology. So I'm like, sure, I'll pick psychology, not because I want to do it, but because somebody else told me that I would be good at it. So I don't know any
Yeah.
better. So I just did it. And, you just go there and you're with friends, you make friends, you party, you do all this stuff. You don't know what your life is going to be. And then all of a sudden, when you hit, well, for me as well, when you hit your 30s, and I'm like, I haven't done anything with this degree. Like, I have no idea what to do with it. And you change, you change, and you find the things that actually works for you and the things that you actually want to do.
Yeah.
And I am in the same boat where, it's like I would have loved to come back to university or to go back to college and just kind of do what I'm doing right now and just kind of start all over again, because I know this is where I want. I know this is what I want to do forever, right? So that, for me, poses a huge advantage.
And what a privilege that is, because now we've figured it out. And,
Yeah,
like with you having young kids and my kids, I'm like, I'm not going to push them. I'm not going to push them to be like, you need to figure out what you need to be at the end of high school, because nobody knows what the hell they really should be, unless you're like, I am dead set on being a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher. Those three professions take time. And if you're willing to
absolutely.
commit the time to that, then you go and do that. I'm going to be a marine biologist. I'm going to be an astronaut. Like those trades take the time, where
Mhm.
I really like, one thing that I really regret in my life is not being interested in travel, not seeing the world, not being inspired by other cultures and areas and food. Like, I regret that. And so my kids, if they know dead set what they're going to be, I'll support them 100%. But I'm going to be like, take 2 years off. I just posted a little video on my Instagram page, and I was like, if you want to learn how to live in life, go work in a restaurant. It's not glamorous, but you're dealing with, satisfying customers and working hard and being in the weeds and figuring stuff out. Can I swear on the podcast? I don't know. Can I swear?
Yeah, sure.
It's so hard for a chef not to swear. Figuring stuff out, and like just getting that life experience that propels you further in your life, and just understanding the challenges and fixing things. In a restaurant, there's always something to be fixed. Like, oh, this happened here, this happened there, and you're like, okay, well, I know how to fix that. Or you know what? You're like, I'm out. I don't know how to fix it, but I know somebody else does, and I'm asking for help. So you learn a lot of stuff while working in a restaurant.
Yeah, and I wanna come back to that, working in the kitchen, because I do find that really interesting. But I just want to go back a little bit, and for the people that don't know you or haven't met you before, where did you grow up? Are you from around here?
I was born in Sarnia, so way down southern Ontario. And that's where my mom had her business. She owned her own hair salon. And my dad just kind of, he just did odd jobs and construction. Just he never really had a career as much as I remember. He just did a bunch of jobs. And then when he passed away, we moved to Brantford, because that's where all of my immediate family was, my mom's sisters and my cousins and my grandparents. So we were in Brantford for about 7 years. And then my mom met my stepdad, and he is a marine mechanic. And it was just like, we got to go where the boats are. So we moved up here. My one uncle was already living in the area in Coldwater. And so we kind of just came to Coldwater because that's where he was. And we was, familiar because we had visited him a bunch of times when we were younger. And then we just never left. So I've been in Orillia for, oh gosh, since I was 15, and I'm 45 now. So was that 30 years? 30?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
30 years.
Wow,
So I've been in Orillia for 30
that's a long time.
years. I
Yeah,
know. Yeah, it's definitely home. I've always lived in the country, though. I've always lived on the outskirts of towns. And so what's really awesome about being a business owner on the downtown street is this feels like family. like all of the business owners that we interact with, or we share, we talk, and, I can call up Jenna and be like, hey, do you have an extra tent? She's like, no problem. Or she'll call me, or, Darcy and Simon, like, hey, can I throw some lobsters in your fridge? I'm like, yeah, no problem. Before they had their full operation, it was just like, it was very much a community focus, which is what Orillia is. And what I really truly
Yeah,
love about Orillia is, people step up and help each other out, especially in this niche world of restaurants, and all of our little restaurant tours on the street, which, cause there's a lot of restaurants on the meat street. Yeah, we
actually.
all are rooting for each other and supporting each other, and, secretly always in competition. But at the end of the day, if they're doing well, I'm doing well, we're all doing well. Right. So
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You want everybody to succeed. At the end of the day, the city of Orillia wants that as well. You don't want, empty places all around the main drag. You want all the businesses that are in downtown to be succeeding and to be thriving and to be there and stay there for a long time because, it's,
absolutely.
people walk around, people do all sorts of stuff, all sorts of events down there.
The downtown in most towns, when they're well kept and well maintained and, are thriving, are the heart of the city. They really
Mhm.
are. And so, that suits me just fine to be included kind of in the heart of Aurelia, because that's what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to your story, you were part of the stage, which was sort of like an event, right?
Yeah.
If I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
And what happened after that? Like, where does Eclectic kind of fit into the equation, or what did you do leading up to Eclectic?
Yeah. So, you know what? I had come back and I'm like, I need to find the best place in this area for me to work. I need to find somebody that is locally focused. I need to find somebody that speaks to what I just was inspired by. And so when I was in school, I had started, we called it Supper Club. And I would find restaurants that would take us and do like a 3-course meal for like a price of a student, what we could make for students. And then there'd be up to 25 of us going to a restaurant with some of our chefs and professors. So collectively, we would go out and dine somewhere and experience the food, the ambiance. We would do different cultures and different styles of food and be inspired by that because, we're culinarians. We want to eat. And one of the spots was Era 67 in town, and Ian and Sarah Thompson were running that at the time. And that was one of our little stops. And so afterwards I had spoken to Ian and I said, are you hiring? Because I'd love to work here. It was, casual fine dining, and he was very locally focused and sustainable. And I was like, I don't see anybody else in town doing what you're doing. And, at that time, I'm like, you're the best in town, and I want to work for you. And so, he was only maybe he wasn't even 5 years. Like, we're pretty close in age. And so it was kind of funny to see somebody that has, like I just spoke, like has gone through the cycle of starting in the dish pit at 18 or 16 and then coming full circle and having his own business and, wanting to make a mark on what you're doing in your career. And so I worked with Ian for a couple of years. And then I worked with Derek Mays over at the Best Western, and he had a spot up in Georgian Bay, and I was on Georgian Bay for the summer with him. And then I was about 33, 32, 33, and I knew that my husband and I were wanting to start a family eventually. And that landed me at Horseshoe Valley in their fine dining restaurant, and, moving up the ranks now to chef de partie instead of just a line cook, which means somebody that works at all stations, and you're not just delegated to the garde manger, which is basically your cold station, or your pans, your veg prep, saucier. So I was doing chef de partie there, and with the intention of they had benefits and a package, and this was a good place to kind of like take advantage of starting a family. So I had worked there for 4 years, had both of our kids there while working there. And at the end of my maternity leave with my son, I was like, I had only been in maybe 6, 7 years in the industry. And I already knew I don't think I want to work nights. I don't. I just it's not going to work for me and my family now. And it's really important to be there for my family and my kids and be a present mom. And one of those stigmas of culinary that, you're working your 12-hour days and you are here from, 11 until 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, that's not what I wanted for myself. So I just basically had to create what I needed my life to look like. And in this environment of restaurants, it's not something that is often done. We're just a lunch location. And then on the weekends, when I have extra help, we do full scale catering. But, getting to here, I did the farmers markets. I did Otis Park. I did a couple other markets and little events around the area, doing mostly baking because baking sells at markets. So I would do cakes and cupcakes and scones and biscuits, which we currently, sell. And then there was a couple that had come through the market, and they were Mary and Lauren Van Sinclair, and they owned Carousel Collectibles, which is currently where the Common Stove is. But previous to the Common Stove, it was an antique shop, and it was a massive one. It was like 6,000 square feet. And she had said to me, would you be interested in running our cafe? Like, just take it over. We don't want anything to do with it. Just take it over and do it. And I was like, okay, well, let's have a conversation and see what that looks like. So my husband and I had gone and met them a couple times, and they were the absolute loveliest people like you could ever hope to come across. And they had a little spot in the back of their antique shop, a little tiny kitchen, a home oven, and a soup well. They had 20 seats, coffee and tea ready to go, freshly ground cup of coffee, which was great. And they were doing like soups and coffees and some small baking. And it was kind of scary because I was like, well, I could do the markets and still be the mom and be present, or I could take a leap and do this. And it was such a low risk step because what they wanted me to pay was insane. Like, it was, you pay us $300 a month and you can use our internet and our address and our phone and whatever you need to do. Just start. If you didn't come across somebody like that, like, again, these little people just fall into my orbit, and I'm just so grateful. I'm just so grateful. And so I said, okay, let's do it. And so then I was open, I think 4 days a week in the little cafe. We were shopping week to week. We had a new menu week to week because there wasn't a lot of storage. So we were just kind of being creative, and it was kind of, where Eclectic was born there, because people would say, oh, I hear you have a spot now. Well, where is that? I said, well, we're at the back of an antique shop, and, it would have been a great, like, diners, drive-ins and dives, right? Like, episode is kind of what I see, right? It's like, what is this cafe doing in the back of an antique shop? And every time I would explain it, I'm like, the chairs don't match the tables, and the cutlery, they don't match. And the plateware is not chipped, but farmhouse plateware, and nothing matches. I'm like, it's very eclectic. It's very eclectic. And I'm like, eclectic. Well, it means a broad and diverse range of styles, tastes, and inspirations. And I'm like, okay, well, I take food from Asia and use Canadian ingredients. That's eclectic. And I take, something you wouldn't think of and marry it with something else. And that is an eclectic style. It doesn't make sense, but it does make sense. And so using the kind of inspiration of the antique shop and keep saying, well, it's very eclectic. And it's such a hard word for people to say. So I love that people now finally understand, like, we have clout where people like Eclectic Cafe, we get electric, we get eclectic. Like, I even have the mnemonic spelling on our site to try and like keep eclectic.
Actually, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why I did it, because I was like, yeah, it's just crazy. And then we were there for a year, and, I knew that they were kind of planning on retiring eventually. And again, their second retirement, we would joke. And then the space became, it was sold, and I had to figure out what was the next step. And then I was looking in town at the time. There was a couple spots that was available, and I very much love the history of Orillia. And I knew that this space was Fred's Meat Market for many, many years. And I had shopped here as a customer as Fred's Meat Market. And when we had come through, it was kind of, 5 years ago was tricky for this block because there wasn't a lot of businesses on this block. This block was very much dead with, the byway the way it was, and a couple of the other buildings that were just like desolate. And it was really unfortunate because we have a beautiful library and the opera house right across from us. So it could be a very beautiful
Yeah.
block. And people have said and jokingly, like, you were the revitalization of this block when you decided to take on this space. And it makes me feel good because it's like, well, now we're all a part of the revitalization of this block because people could see, what it could be and what it could look like. So, and then a year after that, we moved and renovated this space. And then, yeah, that was 5 years ago.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's amazing.
But I'm still on the same block as where I started. So, I mean, that's super cool. I really like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's an amazing story. And I think everybody, at least everybody that I know, like, has now gotten used to, I guess, eclectic in that sense. I see you guys do a lot of stuff now, a lot of events, a lot of catering. You guys have recently expanded as well. You took over that little spot next to yours as well, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, all of this stuff is me until this point, right? And it's like, I've had some people that have been with me on the journey, and my sous chef Christine has been with me for 6 years. I was training her at Era 67 as a high school co-op student, and she kind of stuck in the business and stuck around and had kind of worked for Ian in a couple spots. And then when they left, she came back, and I was like, dude, just come and work for me. Just come and work for me. So she also was working for me at the antique shop, which was really, really cool. Because she was a part of the growth of the journey. And then the first wedding that I'd ever catered on my own, which was scary as hell. But again, you just kind of jump in and figure shit out. I had put a call out. I'm like, I need help with somebody. And Alana and I had met through our midwife group. And we were on a group chat, and she's like, I'll come and help you. I'm like, okay, sure. I'm like, I don't even remember what you look like, but I'll take bodies at this time. Like, I just need people to move food. And she shows up, and that was 7 years ago. So then Alana started working with me occasionally, and she was also a young mom, and has just kind of been with me on the journey. When I was starting at Carousel, I couldn't go to the market because we wanted to be open in both spots. So she would go and do the Saturday market for me. Then she started serving. Then she started kind of taking over a lot of the emails and correspondence because I was getting too busy to do those things. And she just became, like a permanent fixture, and she's amazing. And when we decided that we needed more space for catering, which is crazy because it happened 2 years ago, just coming out of COVID. I didn't think that was ever going to be the case because it was just such a terrible time for restaurants, but, we managed. And then, so at that point, Alana, came in as a partner. So we had expanded, and the only way to do that was to have some extra capital. And, she's like, I'm in. She's like, I see the future. I see where we're going. I see what you're doing, and I want to be a part of it. And I'm like, I'm so glad, because I don't like doing all the other things that you do now. The things when you start out and you're like, you do all the things and wear all the hats, and it's overwhelming and it's stressful, and you just do it because you have no choice. And then when someone that comes along that is like great and of such a great value to you, and you're like, oh, thank God. I was like, now we can equally split the workload and feel like we're moving ahead, and I'm not just like walking through mud all the time because I had so much stuff to do. So she's been absolutely incredible and invaluable. And she's very much funny because she likes to be behind the scenes. And, whenever there's a photo opportunity, she's like, Melanie, go talk to them. I'm going to go over here. She's like, you go do that. I'm over here. And I'm like, okay, fine. And, clearly I don't mind. So I can talk forever. So yeah, we have a very good balanced relationship. And, again, Alana also has 2 young kids. Our kids are like 4 years. Like, what are they now? They're like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 9, 10, 11, 12, or whatever they are. But same thing. It was appealing for her because she could be home in the night. She could be home at night with her kids, unless there was something doing, right? We always say, if we're not going to be there with our families, it has to be worth doing, right? So it has to be moving us in the right direction, or making us the right connections, or financially the right decision. And so, we also close like during Christmas break because we want to be with our kids, and notoriously restaurants are slow that time. So it allows us to be home with our families, allows our staff to have a mental break and be home with their families. And those things are very, very important to us. And I think that's where we're also kind of pushing the envelope a little bit with that. We have a shared tip pool program. So, you know, more gratuities and tips are being shared among all staff, not just service staff, which is very important to us because, you know, we're trying to get to the point where we can be a living wage employer, but it's difficult in this environment. It's difficult right now because everybody is, you know, holding on to their pennies again, and all events are down and all fundraising seems to be down. And, you know, going out to restaurants was not necessarily like kind of like, yeah, I'll go eat. It's more like a planned occasion now. It's not just
Right.
I'm going to go stop because I'm hungry, which still happens. I mean, that's usually what happens with me. I didn't eat today. I didn't set a timer. I need to go get something to eat. So yeah, having Alana and some of the staff, I've had Savannah's been with me for 5 years in this space as well. Like, just, you know, and another thing that's really amazing with what we do is the majority of our staff have been women, and that's kitchen and front of house. We've had, I think, 4 male employees. We currently have 1, which has been with me for 3 years. And that's not to say that I don't hire male employees. It's just women kind of come to us knowing that this is an inclusive space. It's a safe space. They feel respected. They feel valued. They feel heard. And, you know, in this environment of culinary, that's kind of such a misconception because you hear in the high end kitchens of the hierarchy and the angry chef and being, you know, we've all watched The Bear. We all know what it's like. And that's true. That is very true. And I've been very adamant that that will never be our place of business. That will never be, you know,
Yeah.
I have a new server and she's like, thanks, chef. I'm like, it's Mel. Don't call me chef. It's Mel. Because I don't want to be that person that is above. You know, everybody has amazing input and value and insight, and they should be treated as such. And I'm like, nah, it's just Mel. Just call me Mel. So
That's amazing. And from the little that I know about the culinary industry, it also seems, I think from my perspective, and not that I know exactly, but I feel like it skews male oriented, like a lot of chefs or a lot of cooks. I don't know if I'm right, but is it more, there's more men than there are women in the culinary field?
absolutely. 100% there are. And I think that's become, you know, a really great shift in the last, I'd say probably 15 to 20 years. You're seeing a lot more female executive chefs, and you're seeing a lot more females in the kitchen, which is amazing, or people that identify as female, just wanting to be safe and seen. And, you know, you always had, whenever you worked, you had that one woman in the kitchen. You had that one female. And you were fighting, you were clawing to try and be recognized as good as. And so what I think we're creating here is everybody is equally as good as. There's no need for anybody to feel, you know, like they need to fight to be seen, here, especially. So, you know, and by doing that, I encourage the staff to include menu items. Every time we change the menu, I'm asking them, what do you guys think? And they're like, well, what about this? And I'm like, it's not quite seasonal. So what about something with this in it or that in it? And this teaching and learning and trying to be inspiring. But as definitely a male dominated profession, you know, same thing with policing, which was what I was focusing on.
That's true.
I guess I'm just scrappy, and I had fight, and I'm like, you know, I'm going to be the toughest chick around, and nobody's going to tell me anything otherwise. So it's the same. And I've said this before too, like wanting to focus on policing and being a chef. There's so many similar traits in those two professions: high stress, being in charge, being in control, delegation. Like they're very similar. So it's not that being a police officer and a chef are totally different. They are very, very similar. Just one gets paid a lot more and one gets to work with fire. So, you know, so there's trade-offs. There's definite trade-offs, but yeah, I'm really, really happy to see that. And another thing that I'll touch on briefly too is, you know, the industry is just the hours and the time and the pressure. Mental health is such a struggle in this industry. And I'm just so grateful that finally, we're recognizing that, and there's such amazing steps being moved towards that. And there's amazing programs and groups for that. There's one called Not 9 to 5, and they're based out of Toronto. There's the Burnt Chef movement out of the UK, or Burnt Chef Project. I'm currently in a group called the Real Chefs Movement, and it's chefs from all over the world. We have a coach, a fitness coach, and a nutritionist out of Australia. And we have chefs from UK, New Zealand, Mexico, the United States,
Wow.
and Canada. And we're all collectively in this group to, just be the best versions of ourselves. That could be gaining weight. That could be losing weight. That could be, getting off of substances, stop relying on alcohol, and really kind of changing your mindset. So I'm really glad that, going into this industry late, there's so many positive changes coming into it now, women and mental health being like at the forefront for me, which is really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I want to get into that a little bit, but before I forget, I have one question here that I don't want to forget. And it's because I know I've seen a lot of articles. You have it on the front of your window as well, I think.
Yeah.
Where does where do you fit with Chopped Canada?
Chopped Canada. It was really funny. So when I was working for Ian at Era, he was on an episode of Chopped Canada, and it was just cool. So it was just cool watching the process. And I was like, that's fun. And again, I'm not a person that takes myself too seriously. I've always been kind of the jokester, which is, I can't give my son crap for that anymore because it's a spinning image of me. And I'm like, well, what do you do? It's like, yeah, you're me, buddy. Always center of attention, always wanting to be, the jokester. And I think being in culinary late is, again, like, you got to take the challenges to push yourself to grow. Because if you're not challenging yourself, then you're not growing. And as uncomfortable as it ever will be, you only change during uncomfortable situations. Whether professionally or personally. So there was an application process up, and, a couple of people had forwarded it to me, and they're like, you should do it. And I'm like, what the hell? I'm like, what do I have to lose? I really have nothing to lose, and I have everything to gain. So, I filled out the application. Again, telling them the exact same story that I just told you with Kelowna and losing my dad and all the things that inspired me to this point, being a mature student. And it was just money for a producer. They're like, this is like, she's going to make everybody cry. Like, this is going to be great. Let's get her on the show. And I actually did make the producers cry in the on-camera interview, which was pretty funny.
Wow.
They're like, this is amazing. It was such a great story. And so then I was selected to be on one of the episodes, and it was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. It was I wouldn't say exactly how it airs on TV. But yeah, you don't know who the judges are. You don't know who the chefs are. You don't know what the ingredients are. You have a little bit of time to go through the kitchen and meet the chefs in the morning. We started at 6 a.m. and we finished at 9:30 at night, taping. If you get to the final round, you're there all day. And it was interesting. It was like 80 people on the set to make a 1-hour episode. It was nuts.
Wow.
And I just was like the little engine that could, I guess. I just kept getting the better remarks over everybody else. And I had only been cooking for 5 years at the time, professionally. And I was surprised. I was surprised that I won, because I was like, again, this is just for fun. It's to be on the show. If I don't win, I don't win. I've probably been like, damn it. But, I was like, okay, this happened. This is pretty freaking cool. And, everybody's like, why don't you have that like right at the front? Like, it's a little tiny on the window. And I'm like, it's something that I did once. It's not who I am. And so it's just one of those little things that it's cool that I did that one time. And it worked in my favor, because it'd be a really terrible story if it didn't work in my favor.
Yeah. This happened like after the stage, or?
Yeah, after the stage. And I was working at Horseshoe at the time. So, and again, like, I told my chef, Dylan Telek, that is the executive chef, still there now. He's an amazing guy. And he's like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you're not supposed to call and tell anybody. And the 3 people I called was obviously my husband first. And then I called my mom, And I called my chef and he's like, this is the best news. I'm so proud of you. And yeah, it was just really nice to hear. Right. And, of course, if you tell anybody, I'm like, you can't say a single thing because if you do, like, we'll sue you for more than the money that you want. And I'm like, well, that's not worth it. So we're tight lips.
Right. Right. Until the episode airs, right?
Until
Because
it
usually
airs.
there's a delay.
Yeah, it was an 8.5-month delay. It was crazy. And on that note, I was pregnant when it aired. I was like 8 months pregnant. So needless to say, we had a little chop champion celebration baby. So I was calling my sous chef. He's going to be my sous chef. He's meant to be. So yeah. And then it was great that I won, but because I was pregnant, I couldn't use the momentum of it in town because I wasn't working anywhere at the time. I wasn't working for myself. So I had the money. It was 10,000 and I just kind of like most of it went to being a new mom. I'm not going to lie, but I did have a little bit left. And that's kind of what I started in Carousel Collectibles with, was that little pocket of money left to start my little business. So
wow, that's amazing.
Strange journey, but it's all, again, I'm right where I'm meant to be. So
yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So what is it that Eclectic Cafe, what is it that you guys do now at the present time?
So yeah, we have a 40-seat cafe right on the corner of Andrew and Mississauga Street in Orillia. We have a lovely parking lot right behind us. So that was another selling feature to this location. And then we also, when we expanded 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years next month, we have a retail space. And so what that offers is all of our own house-made baking, jams, jellies, spreads, cookbooks, preserves, our own freezer meals. So we, whenever, again, sustainability is important to us. So if we prep for an event and you always prep about 10% more than what you need in case something falls or something happens or they have 10 extra people. If there's a surplus, those are made into gourmet meals with whatever we have kicking around. And then it's easy for everybody to just stop in and grab, a mac and cheese or a chicken marbella or braised beef short rib in the freezer for dinner. So we've kind of like progressed our line of signature items into the freezer. We also, I've been making scones since the farmer's market, and everybody loves our scones. So you can buy fresh scones on the counter. You can buy frozen scones to cook at home. And yeah, we're constantly trying to expand our product line. And then, having that second unit next door has allowed us to facilitate catering on a much larger scale. For example, we did the Ontario Winter Games last February, where we were feeding 750 athletes a day and volunteers. And wow. To say like, okay, again, like I've never done that before, but it's just like anything else you do. You are organized, you set it up, we had great community partners with the sharing place that let us use some of their facilities because I can't store 750 meals. So they were very generous. But again, making those community partnerships, and that's really important for us. And by doing those things, people are finding us. We do a lot of weddings. We do a lot of celebrations of life. We do a lot of corporate. So you know what? We're really honored that people trust us. And I think what is a step above anybody else in the area, what we do is we're very, very focused on local sustainable and creating custom, we call them memories, food memories with our clients. So if somebody's coming to us for a wedding in, let's say, September, because we just did one this weekend, we talk with the couple. We say, what are your favorite food memories? Like, where did you travel and something inspired you? Is it something your grandmother made? Is it something that your mom always made? And like, how can we recreate that dish using seasonal ingredients, being eclectic and elevating it for you? And I think that's such a service that, food is such a connection with people and holds so much space and memories with people that for us to just do a standard like salmon, steak, and chicken supreme dinner is not who we are. It's not what we want to showcase on the plate. And we want people to walk away going, I felt unique and I felt special and I felt eclectic.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that every time I go to Eclectic, and stuff like that. Just everything is so good. Like everything is so interesting. And you, on top of that, I think one of the signature things that you guys do is like you said, you're very local focused. You source a lot of ingredients, and you have a lot of even in your retail space, right? You have a lot of local things, right? Local things that people can buy, and that makes it just, it paints a story. Like when you go and you have, whenever I have a meal and I'm like, oh my God, why is this so good? And then you see the ingredients and I'm like, I'm pretty sure most of these have to be local, right? Knowing Eclectic, knowing you. And it's such an amazing thing to be able to come up and say like, this is like super high quality restaurant, like cuisine in Orillia, just kind of in the middle of nowhere, right? But everything is local.
Yeah, and very approachable. It's never meant to be pretentious. It's always meant to be like comforting and just make you feel like you were taken care of and nourished. And I think, when we had first met and we were doing some stuff together and I sent a package home with you and you're like, this salad in like February tastes amazing. I'm like, well, that's because we have an aquatic grower in Severn Bridge that grows indoor with a trout fed water system. And we get greens from him all winter. So they are local greens, which is like, it's mind blowing to people. Like, what do you mean? It's February. I'm like, well, he's figured it out and we are happy to support him. So,
Exactly.
And those are the relationships that you have to really seek out and build, and it becomes a trust. And again, we just had our 5-year anniversary in this space, although I've been in business for almost 8 years. And my one farmer spoke and Shannon at the Roost. And she's like, when I first met Melanie, the one thing that stood out to me was she never once asked what my price was. She never was like, can I get that in a discount? If I buy this much, can it be less? Because she knows the quality of the ingredient. She knows the time it takes to produce that stuff, and she respects it. And that's one kind of philosophy I've had working with any farmers. I will never, balk at the price. Like, I know what you're doing. I know what it takes, and I want the best on my plate. And if that's what it costs, then that's what it costs, and again, cost in this environment right now is crazy. Costs are up, but if I can support local, it's going back to our economy, our local economy and our community. And that is very important to us. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100%.
Fresh local food.
Yeah. I still remember that salad. I remember it was me and Michaela. We were sitting, and right next to us was like the door and like outside, and it was like winter, like it was snowing, it was blistering, and I was just eating this salad, and it was so crisp, and it was so delicious. And I'm like, this feels weird. Like right now, as I remember, like in Canada, when you have meals, usually in the winter, you just like whatever came from somewhere really far away, and it's whatever fruit, whatever vegetables you can get, and it is what it is. And then I'm eating this, I'm like, oh my God, like why? Where is this coming from? It was like, yeah, I still remember that salad. It was amazing.
And I remember you saying it, and that's why I brought it up too, right? Because it's like, yeah, one thing that's really special to us is, again, we really speak from the heart. And at the end of the season, so usually late October for most of our farmers, we have what we call a farmer's lunch. And so I invite every single farmer that we've worked with, and whether they know each other or not, they all have the opportunity to talk to somebody about farming and their struggles and their woes. And like, my tomatoes didn't grow. How did your tomatoes go? And then we give them food as a thank you. And most of the food is actually their food. And so they're really excited that they're like, oh my God, this is how my mushrooms taste, or this is how my squash tastes, or this is how my Brussels sprouts, or my pork, or my maple syrup, or whatever. And it's really like a really fulfilling experience for me, because it's an amazing way to say thank you for them. And the season is short, and they put in so much work in it, and it's just a really great way for us to say thank you to them. We do the same thing with our vendors that we work with for events. Like, we've had our wedding planners all in to say thank you, and we've had our rental companies in to say thank you. And I think we're at Eclectic, we're very focused on making those long-term sustainable relationships, because again, then we all benefit from that. And that's really important to Alana and I.
Yeah, absolutely. Amazing.
Yeah.
And one last thing, just going back to something that we've kind of touched on throughout the entire podcast, but is the idea of the culinary industry. So what is it I guess, how do I phrase this question? For somebody that would be interested in either owning a restaurant or opening up a cafe or just being part of the culinary industry, what can you tell people about it, whether how it is right now or where it's going? Just kind of, get people a glimpse into what goes inside a kitchen, because I feel like a lot of people wouldn't know what goes inside a professional kitchen.
No, and on that note too, like what you can do with little, right? Like I said, we started with a home oven and a soup well and a pancake griddle from Walmart. Like that's what we started on. And you make it happen. You figure it out. So you have to be, very creative. We currently have an electric kitchen. Like we don't have gas because I couldn't afford to put in a $60,000 hood vent system in the kitchen and have gas and feel like, oh my God, this is great. But I mean, I think just like with anything, everybody wants it perfect right away. And you have to struggle a little bit to figure things out. So knowing that like you could do a lot with little, is one thing that I would say. Everybody wants the perfect decor and the fancy neon lights and like everything to look perfect at first. And there's so many iterations of a business that happens from inception to where you currently are, like we're even thinking like we need to look into a branding change just because we like what we are, but we need to elevate it a little bit more. And, so you're constantly changing and evolving. And the landscape is constantly changing and evolving. Like we opened the restaurant here 8 months before COVID. So it's just like, well, hell, what do we do now? Right. And
Yeah.
thank God that we had done days of the farmers market and we're like, well, this is what we're doing. We're going to do a market format and we're going to make it work. And again, you're constantly, I hate the word shift because that's such a word that came out of COVID, but you're constantly shifting and shifting and shifting. Yeah, it's never perfect when you start, but just start. Like, don't ever let that, because something's not perfect, don't ever let that be the reason why you don't start. It doesn't ever have to be perfect. You just have to start. And I think I did a pretty good job of educating myself by using local community support. With the CDC, they're constantly having workshops and seminars and like entrepreneurship programs.
That's true.
And so like utilizing your community with what it offers is such a huge, important part of the puzzle too, because not everybody knows. I hate accounting and I hate all that stuff, but I've been put into contact with the right people that help me do the right things. We spoke earlier before we started recording, like you pay people to do the things that you don't know how to do. And
Mm-hmm.
those are valuable dollars spent. Get an accountant right away. Get your systems in place right away. You still learn by mistakes. Like there's always mistakes happening constantly. But it's how you learn the lessons to fix them and improve. But you don't have to have a fancy kitchen. You don't. You could look for rented kitchen spaces that you can use to get started. But yeah, there's such a misconception with like it has to be perfect to start, and really all you just need to do is start. Just take the faith and just jump, and you'll figure stuff out. You really will.
And what about the culinary industry? We talked a little bit about how there's a lot of stigma or a lot of past preconception of how the industry usually is, which is a lot of long hours, a lot of mental health issues, just simply because you're from 11 to 11 sort of job. Is that still the case? I know that you do it differently with Eclectic, but how does that work?
Yeah, I think you have to find a place that fits your values. If you're going to work for somebody else, find out what the culture is. Find out why they have a high turnover rate. Find out what they do for their staff. We include a meal for every single staff every day, and it's no charge because I want them to eat it. I want them to feel like they've got something out of it. I want them to feel nourished through the day so they're not running on empty. And, we know what it feels like when you don't eat all day. And it's nice that somebody is taking care of you. With mental health, like I struggled with mental health a lot going into this process. I was on antidepressants for about 3 years, especially coming through COVID. And I'm glad that I had those tools, and I'm glad that I had those people to help me figure that out, because, sometimes you just need a little help, and there's nothing wrong with that. And there's such a stigma. I'm so glad that the world is really turning a corner on this with mental health. Because it's not always permanent. It could be situational, and it was very situational for me. It was something I had never done before. And I recognized that I wasn't in a healthy place, and I sought out the right people, and I was going to counseling, and it worked wonders for me. I get everybody's journey is different 100%, but, I think it's important too, like we've had people in, and, there's been a tragic situation in their life, and it's happened while they're working for us. And it's like, you go take the time that you need, and don't worry about work, and just keep me informed with what's going on. Because one of our employees lost her dad while she was at work, and it was just like heartbreaking. And I'm like, I don't want to see you for 2 weeks. And if you need money, you tell me, because I want to take care of those people that are taking care of us here, and in turn taking care of our customers. Because if you don't take care of those people, then you're never going to have a successful business. You take care of the employees first. I think it was Richard Bronson from Virgin Mobile, right? Like, you take care of your employees first, and they'll take care of your customers, and show compassion, right? Like, it's just, everybody has their days, everybody has their moments. And if you're not compassionate, it's never about, for us anyways, it's never about the bottom line. It's never about the dollar. It's always about, how are you doing today? I've noticed that you've been really quiet. Like, is everything okay? Is there anything I can help you with? And do you want to talk? And so, previously, we'll say like 25 years ago, there was like, check your shit at the door, get online, shut up, and do your work. And that's what culinary was. That's what kitchens were. And you had to have that thick skin. And it didn't matter if you're crumbling inside, and now, the suicide rate was insane back then. And now I think moving into our current situation, we're so aware of mental health, and it doesn't have to be something that you really struggle with alone, but it's also your leaders being intuitive enough to see it and recognize those things. And, as somebody, like I said, has been through it, I have no problem speaking about it to anybody. And I'll be like, I see you're struggling right now. Is there something that I can do to help you? Do you need a day off? Do you need a mental health day? Like, if that's what you need, I would rather you say to me, Mel, I just need a day off because I'm at my limit. And I'll be like, okay, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And you take the time you need, and we'll see you tomorrow or the next day or whatever it needs to be, So yeah, I'm so glad it's changing. I really am.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like that. And is there anything else that you'd like to mention that we haven't yet before we wrap up the episode? Is there anything that we missed?
No, I don't know. I think we're good. I think I talked your ear off. I'm an open book, and I love talking. And like I said previously, I would always get in trouble at school because I'd be the one that was always talking. And like now it's to my advantage, which is pretty sweet. And this is probably why I would love to do a podcast, because I could just sit here and talk to people forever. I would actually love a podcast with Chef and Farmer. And we had talked about that with my one farmer friend, Shannon O'Donnell at the Roost. And she's like, we could just talk for hours. I'm like, dude, like that podcast would never end. That would be the problem. We would just be like, hey, pour more wine. Let's keep talking.
Yeah.
This is coffee in my cup this morning, so it's not wine. But yeah, I just love sharing my experiences. I love, trying to encourage I'm in that middle-aged category now, so I'll say the younger generation, to really fight for themselves and have values and be who you are, and just find people that attract those things, and just keep challenging yourself. It's about keep challenging yourself. You got to grow. Whenever I get bored, or I don't know, feel like I'm stuck, I'm like, okay, what I need something to challenge myself. I need a new thing to learn. I need a new cookbook. That's usually what it starts with. I'm like, I need a new cookbook of Ethiopian food because I've never cooked it before. I need to be inspired by something, right? And then you get like, Burberry spice on everything in the next menu. It's just like, you're like, how can I make this mine and learn and grow? And we're in such a amazing space where we have so much knowledge at our fingertips, but just use the right knowledge and seek
Yeah,
out the really cool stuff, So
absolutely.
just keep growing. But this was really awesome, June. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. That's one of the things that I wanted to say before I forget that we probably didn't mention is that Eclectic changes their menu all the time as well, depending on what you're able to get for that specific time period, right? You guys change your menu all the time. It's not a static menu.
It's not a static menu. This is probably the least amount of times this year I've changed the menu. I think we changed it 4 times, which isn't enough for me. But we were short staffed all summer and we had a lot of events. And so we were just like, something had to, it really killed me that there was rhubarb on the menu until September. And people are like, rhubarb's not in season. I'm like, oh, I know it's not in season. So we've got beets on it for right now. So this year's been a little bit more challenging with just having enough staff to do the things that we wanted to do. But I have changed it up to 8 times in a year because we try to do it on a 8 to 10 week kind of rotation. We all know radishes take 45 days to grow. So it's like, what's next after the radish, after this, after this? And what it does for the customer is, we always keep some mainstays. We always keep the favorites, which are mostly sandwiches, but it encourages people to try something different. And it encourages people to not be in a food rut. Like, I'm going to this restaurant for this dish and I'll be there for 20 years. And I know that's what I want. And it's like, that's great. And that's consistency and awesome. But like, you're never pushing the culinary boundaries of trying new foods or new combinations. And, so that's what we really like to do as well, is like put something that maybe you never would have thought would go together, but really goes together. We were doing pickled rhubarb for a while, and a couple of people were like, I never would have thought to pickle rhubarb before. And it's like, yeah, it's great. It's on a salad. So you take the standards like strawberry and rhubarb, and what do you think? What do you think when you think of strawberry and rhubarb? What comes to your mind?
Well, like a dessert, like the
pie.
Yeah.
Right? Strawberry rhubarb pie. I'm like, okay, well, how can we make this savory? How can we do it differently? So the strawberry is the dressing, and then pickled rhubarb on the salad. So you still have strawberry and rhubarb. What grows together goes together, but in a different format, right? Or we roasted rhubarb with za'atar spice on it and put it on another dish. And it was like, it adds that bitter component and you're familiar with it because it's, everybody has rhubarb growing in their backyard. But yeah, trying to think of ingredients in different ways that you wouldn't normally expect them to be. And I love it when people try something new and they're like, this is so interesting. I'm like, in a good way, I hope. So yeah, it really pushes people to try something new. And it also keeps us invested in the menu. There's a fly driving me crazy. It also keeps us invested in the menu. We don't want to cook the same thing all year. We really don't. It's boring and it doesn't create any life in the kitchen. And you're just there doing the same thing over and over and over again, and it's like, it keeps the staff engaged, it keeps the customer engaged, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It keeps everything from being boring. It keeps it interesting just for everybody involved, right? So I think that's pretty awesome.
And the servers love it when there's a new menu. They're like, oh my God, I just tried this yesterday. You got to try it. It's so good. Right. And it's like, they're speaking because they've tried the menu and they're like, yeah, this is the dish of this menu. You got to try it. Right. So
plus you're not just saying the same thing over and over again because the menu changes. You get to, talk about different things more now. It's not just like you've had this for however many years and you're just saying it. You've said the same thing as a server, right? For years now, because that's all there is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. So for people that want to try Eclectic or want to, hire you for catering and stuff like that, where can people find you?
So our phone number is 705-330-0101. And our website has all of our information. So www.eclecticcafe.ca, one word. It has all of our information for catering. It has what we have on the menu. It has all of our promotions that are running. We're coming into Thanksgiving. I'm not sure when this is going to air, but we have a Thanksgiving package available. So we call it the Fixins package. So it's all the sides because that's the most work. And you cook your vegetarian protein or your turkey, ham, beef, whatever you want to do. So we'll do all that. And, all of the promotions that we run through the entire year. We're also going to be adding a calendar feature, which we definitely delayed on getting up on the website to see, events that we're running. We're looking at doing some trivia a couple nights throughout
cool.
the fall, just to get some nighttime activity in. One thing that we did last year, which was such a smashing success, I'll talk about it very quickly, is because I was on Chopped, we did a Chopped for Charity event.
That's
and
right.
So we're on the fence if we're going to do it again, because it was a lot of work. And again, when you do something for the first time, you change the way you do it the second time. And we called it Chop for Charity. So we had 3 home cooks square off against each other, 3 rounds. The winner of each 3 round competed against me. Can you beat a Chop Canada champion? And the running joke was like, what do they get if they win? And I'm like, 80 hours a week and no pay. So that's work. They're like, oh, wait a minute. I'm like, it's not glamorous all the time, guys. So that was a really, really awesome event, and we were so proud of it, and people had a lot of fun, got a lot of traction. So we're looking at doing things like that again. And we did cooking classes last winter. Again, these things are mostly featured in our off season because we do so many events throughout the summer. So it's a way for us to like do something fun and different. I think we're going to call it like Cookbook Club this year. So you sign up for a cooking class and we'll be cooking a menu out of a cookbook that everybody gets to take at the end of the day. So we're working on that format.
Oh, that's cool.
And then because we have the space next door, then everybody, comes in and uses the space next door and gets to cook and all that fun stuff. So yeah, we're coming up with some interesting stuff. We're just trying to plug away and do something and just keep being relevant. But everything can be found on our website, eclecticcafe.ca. We're also on Instagram, Eclectic Cafe, Facebook, because I can never figure out, I've locked myself out. You know that, June. I can't change the name. So it's Eclectic Cafe by Melanie Robinson Catering, because that's what I started with. So that's the Facebook tag. And, honestly, just between the 3 formats, that's all we have time for. I don't have time to do any more than that because I'm the one doing all the social as well. So, it's another full-time job, but I think it's pretty honest what we do, and people, recognize us, and it gets out there. It works.
Yeah, for sure. Love it. So then thank you very much for being part of the podcast, Mel, and I hope to see you at your next event. Yeah, well, I think I'm going to see you. You're going to be at the Lunch and Learn. Oh, I am going to be at the Lunch and Learn. Yeah, that's right. Because you got some really cool stuff to talk about. And June's been talking about me the whole time, but June is really amazing. And we're really fortunate in the last 3 years that he's been able to help us with our marketing strategies and a bunch of little things that we kind of, as business owners, we always joke, you're always doing the things in the business and you never have the time to work on the business. And so again, hiring people like June to help you work on the business is also just as important as working in the business. So, we're glad that we kind of found you and started that relationship, because what you do is pretty cool too, man. So thank you. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm glad you think so. But yeah, thank you very much for being in the podcast. And Thank you. It was great.